Okay, we're back. So we found some olives. Like I was saying, this house. Well, this city. Oh, darn. I know it's starting to rain. Well, the city used to be called Maryville. I think it had a lot of religious history back. And then I believe the blueprint, they came down here and were like, hey, can we change your city name to Beeville? Well, there was another city before that, but when I figured out Beeville, I noticed that it seemed, how do you say, dang. Okay, here we go. So when you look at the, I guess, city layout, like the roads, like the blueprint we were talking about for the New World, you can see a lot of religious references. But then we have St. Mary's is our main street. But it forks off to Washington, which is like, I bet whenever we industrialized that city, they were like, that was Congress. And I wonder what kind of stuff that had to happen. I wonder how much money they paid them. I believe that this city was like, I don't know, they're probably fighters. So they had got their way too, I believe. I don't see many cities that do that. But I think whenever they came to America, isn't it funny that they, well, the blueprint, hey Saul, here comes the sun. The blueprint was to be set up whenever King James came into office, because I know people probably know that. Now we went from overseas to Jamestown, at least that's what we named it. You get it? So there was a reformation. Like we said, the blueprint, it also had even the church. That's why St. Paul's, I keep saying, hey, and get this. So there are Masonic lodges here in America. Well, what is a Mason? Like one that actually builds, right? Well, whenever Sir Christopher had to rebuild everything, even the church, they reformed a lot of stuff for the King James Modern Bible. It wasn't the King James Bible back then. So I think it was like a time thing where whenever, but here's the kicker, the New World brings over, by law in the royal court, not blood. Blood could be catastrophe, but also Wren had come to America before. I know there's a lot of stuff that people don't know. I know this guy in America has so many landmarks and stuff. Like for a lot of academia, that's why it's like, come on, y'all. But a lot of people don't know this guy. Anyway, so we go to Jamestown, not the Wrens, not the blueprint. They send us down here in the south. And that's like the Alamo people, because Spain was a powerhouse. They wanted America too. And this is where all our Texas history. Why do you think they call Texas, or okay, I'll put it this way. How, I know, hey, so how many can you name countries, states? I'm not even sure, but with X, you know, like a map, X marks the spot. So we have Mexico, logical, right? Spain goes from the bottom up. That's why we have Spanish. Now, then we have what is this? The adversary of Britain, the king and Wren. We become friends. How brilliant. That sounds like a Wren. And what do? We hide down south with the adversary, not with all the hobnobbers in Jamestown, thinking that this is their world, you know? The others are blood. Well, our family, the blueprint, he sent Wren, he sent 3 brothers, brother Wrens, with him, and 2 were by law in the royal court. 1 was his blood. I'll just leave it there. So whenever this day came and they're like, who are you? And it's like, well, it's me. They're like, well, what is this you're talking about? This isn't what they told us. I know, it's funny. And then it gets better by blood. That means that whenever we rebuilt Britain, I know Wren had to, I'm telling you, like the Renaissance, before the Renaissance, I don't think life was really nice. So kings and stuff lived lavish luxury because it's what he wanted. And everybody else was like, it's funny because King Charles II, that's my Trump. That's my father. I'm not kidding. Now we have King Charles III, finally back in the throne. This is the point of the royal court. So Wren was like, let's get smart. Let's make it law, Oxfordia, to keep it in the family, obviously, right? So, and I'm not saying that Wren was one of those that were like, but I am at the same time. Whenever King Charles II was assassinated, leaving not second. See, dang, I know, that's scary, because King Charles I, right? I know. Let's get back to the royal family, the royal court, but not talking about the royal society, which Wren had to start too, because whenever the King Charles, I know I keep saying, that was a different time. You think about millennials controlling the world versus a baby boomer back then. So whenever he was assassinated, that left a 20-year-old as king. And Wren was already working with King Charles I. I know, he must have been really smart, but his father was working with the kings and stuff, so they also all, it wasn't anything new, but the 2 kids were just friends. You get it? So it's like, so St. Paul, they had to reform. And the funny thing is, in 1666, the city burnt down. London, it literally was nothing. So the guy had put on his plate, a burnt down city. We need all new roads. We need a setup. And this is the Renaissance. So we keep it in the family. That's why it's like royal, right? And a a lot of family is by law, but it's in court. We are law. Anyways, we're blood. I know. It's funny because the two other blood wrence, we have a Bible for the who's who in America. Those two are by law. I don't know if, and we're the poor wrens. We're in Texas, South Texas, right by, and that's what's so cool because I even have Spanish in me. Right? I'm not kidding. So all these by-lawers, they might be dead, but their family, they have no clue what's going on. But it's by law, so they didn't care. But whenever they found out that there was a blood, they were like, how is this? And it's like the logic is so simple. They probably did something to like give sanctions, maybe. I don't know. That's why it's like Charles III. We have the world at our fingertips. My Trump is back in office. That's my dad. If I was to say King Charles III by blood. My middle name is William. This is where enlightenment starts to play a big factor in the blueprint. I know. So it's funny that I guess they started names too, right? So there's a way that we, even in America, accept names like your first, your middle, and your last. There's a formula, I know. It's all genius. Well, anyways. So they put a by blood in America as almost like humor. Maybe they knew about this piece of geolocation because the magic, we have a King Charles III enthroned. We have a wren that was enlightened by blood. But who, check this out. I know, here comes the sun. Now, my mother, unfortunately, her middle name, she's an Anne. We had Princess Diana for a while, and she gave birth to Prince Williams. Now he is up next by law. Now, I know, William, it's funny, one of the wrens, actually, I met, and she was the only person, I was a child, and she called me by William, and I was like, no one's ever called me, like, you know, is William Wren here? And I was like, wow, no one's ever said that. And she was the first person to say, are you related to Sir Christopher? And I was like, who's this? I was a freshman in high school, and they're like, yeah, he designed St. Paul's. So Sinton, my grandfather, I guess us poor wrens, the poor ones, he goes, and like I was saying, Wren, when he had to redesign St. Paul's, he did it his way, not the way it was when it burned down, like they wanted. But anyways, I'll just finish here. This is a long one. So, Sinton is a little city, I don't know how many thousand, under 10, maybe under 5. But then there's a city literally connected to Sinton called St. Paul's. This is all 30 miles away from me. Now, isn't it funny that if, let's say the blood, I know, how far did you make it inland? If they put Corpus, it's one of the most important ports for international maritime trade. So whenever Princess Diana gave birth, these are going to be by laws in the actual royal court. But there is a secret, right? Unfortunately, my mother, her middle name is Anne, just like my middle name is William. I can't believe she died, right? And then people are like, conspiracies, and it's like, I heard about something called Agenda 21. Y'all guys can look that up too. And it's like, huh. Why would they do that to us? Right? I think that means like they wanted to make sure that that never got out, that secret. Which, whenever we started to see, I know, hey. So when we started to see, alright, I'll finish off really fast. So, they reformed the church. That's why we have the King James Bible, because after King Charles II died, they started the church. That's when the King James edition was released. But if you go back thousands of years before, and Bibles before, there's other things, and I think they left out a lot in the King James. But there is a lot that probably is okay. But now we come back to this day. Well, back then, they revised it, right? You get it? And this is what we're living. They say there's going to be a second enlightenment. And that's why it's like, I gotta get a hold of Oxford. That's my family. Because why did Oxford and Cambridge break up? Religious beliefs. And they had to reform the church. I think it isn't important. I know people don't understand that. They're more interested in the Royal Society. The science part, because remember, I know this guy, Wren, he was all into science. He's the teacher of Isaac Newton. Do you see how that he had to do everything? But his father taught him, don't ever keep any notes. And I'm like, I guess whenever I first started to become aware of his importance, and nothing like this, nothing blood related importance of royalty, but I know, I think it's saying you gotta go, dude. Maybe we'll talk about this later. But these are secrets of the blueprint that I'm waiting to talk to people that are like, okay, yeah. So you're Masons in America. We only know what Masons in America, right? And that's like the bottom foundation. It was built because when St. Paul's had to be redesigned, and this is what changed history back then, his stone masons that were doing the physical labor, he would tell them all these secrets and how to do things like really intelligently. And they were actually some of the most famous stone masons because of this. So now we have secret society. And whenever Wren went on to do something else, these masons, the closest to him, they go to a new place. They have their followers. You see how it started? Isn't that cool? And even in America, they had sent these people to build a infrastructure or lodges like in Sinton. The sentence, right? Isn't that awesome? But what won it for me was like St. Paul's is a city with like one neighborhood street. I don't even know, but like in Texas, you know, whenever you see a city, there's like an official city little sign. It's green, is like whatever, but Sinton's already super small. And then there's a St. Paul's. I wonder if the blueprint was like, we want to change Sinton to St. Paul's. You get it? Now here's the thing. My grandfather actually mastered that lodge. And I don't know how far he was. You see? To become enlightened. Did he know about Sinton and just couldn't tell me? Right? I mean, not Sinton for sure. But what St. Paul's, remember I said Beeville was changed from Maryville. What if, I don't know, the whole point is to set up a blueprint and watch it unfold. How many years since 1666? Isn't that crazy? But so we had to go political probably and be like, dude, we want to build this, we want to have St. Paul's here. So see, it's like, was that serendipity, or does somebody overseas know that needs to be St. Paul's? Get it? I don't know. That's why it's like, let me go talk to my family, my other side of the world family. And if I can't contact them via email, because for some reason my email IP is blocked from even Oxford. So Newton and the Royal Society, when Wren was the founding father of it, right? It's not even a joke. The AI said it was a lie. I was like so offended because the 20-year-old king is like, dude, this is amazing stuff. Just like a few people that do see the light here. And he was like, I want to know everything. And it's like, King Charles III, come on. This is your turn now. Can't believe they made you wait so long. That means they didn't want you to be there. That's strange. Kind of like me, right? So, I don't know if you feel like I'm like saying stepbrother, like with Will Ferrell, which would be great. I'll literally live in the clearance office. Get it? Clearance. It's so funny. The humor, because we needed words like rent to become civil. And the thing is, with the crocodile and all these other symbolisms of even Egyptian art, you see? The Bible is words. The Bible is a story. It's not a history book. It is the greatest story ever written. Maybe the first English story. Maybe that is by design. Maybe English was made like for this. And they say English is one of the hardest languages to learn. It's like, I guess I got a little bit of a starter being put down here, because the people up there in Jamestown, I believe, they don't have a clue what's going on. But they already run the world. They don't care about the royal thing. But the problem is, the crocodile is supposed to be a protector and all these other things of a key in, like a king. So even like the book, they say that if you want to be basic and simply put, the Egyptians were the first Christians, if you want to look at it with ignorance. But it went the other way around. We all followed the same rules. You get it? So why is the crocodile here? I don't know. It's why is the serpent of chaos? Why is creation here and telling me you need to go there? And why aren't they allowing me to go there? Because of money? Because of mint? So before, in that book, remember, somebody said, hey, we want gold. And they gave them gold. But back then, when they saw the symbolism in the sky, that meant it was not a joke. And even Ren, using logic, was like, dude, it's gonna be tough to get gold if we have this new civilized, like, our modern culture. So see, like, what a cult is? We agree on these things that we believe in today. So it's like, hey, we better make a way to please it. And they said, let's make mint. I was like, this is brilliant. It was meant to be worth gold, because I'm sure they were celebrating the other historical stories. Historical. So, that's so funny. So we created something fake that it accepted. It was like, that's pretty smart. If it is all seeing, all knowing, it's giving us the ideas to enlighten men to continue to become like men. So that thing flying by in the videos is called creation. Is that the smoking bullet? Is this the smoke of the gun? Is that a shooting star? Is that the bullet? Is this the Big Bang? Because people couldn't figure out something fake. They even created digital, like online mint, which is invisible. And it's funny how the world is like that today. That, like, a pound, well, how many pounds of gold is this worth? America, we're even smarter because we had to rig up our own ideas. So we're like, let's create a dollar, a bill, a stamp. That's why I had my little stamp act. They were like, this will have a secret on it. Like on $100 bill, you see a feather. It even is golden. So it has all these secrets on the dollar. People probably have heard those things. Like, if you see the dollar this way, it has this little thing on there. Yeah, that's what it's meant to be on there because it's worth something. You can already see how they're starting to take away coins. And it's like, darn it, I just became enlightened to currency. So that's pretty cool. I gotta get out of here. Okay, bye.